She looked me dead in the eye and said, "You were just my safe option, Mark." No tears. No shame. Just that smug little smirk, like she was doing me a favor by leaving. For years, I paid the bills, built her dream house, and made her feel secure. Turns out, she only loved the safety, not the man who gave it. She thought I'd break down, beg her to stay. But I didn't beg. I planned. And when I was done, she finally learned what it feels like to lose everything she thought was safe. My name is Mark Lawson. I'm 42, a cybersecurity consultant by trade, which means I notice patterns other people miss. I've been married to Hailey for 12 years. No kids, just the two of us and a life we built together. A comfortable house in a quiet neighborhood, a reliable car in the driveway, weekend trips to the coast when work allowed. From the outside, we look like the kind of couple who'd last forever. Hailey is everything the marketing world reveres. Smart, magnetic, polished. People flock to her at parties, and clients trust her instincts. When we were younger, she told me she chose me because I made her feel safe. Something about my steadiness, my ability to hold things together. I took it as a vow. I thought that's what love sounded like. But over the years, that promise loosened at the seams. The first cracks were almost invisible. An extra lipstick on her sweater, a faint perfume that wasn't hers, a late-night call she forgot to mention. She started staying at the office longer, then claiming weekend strategy sessions. She'd come home tired but somehow perfectly made up, as if she'd changed lives between one email and the next. I told myself not to be paranoid. Work is demanding. Marketing campaigns stretch people. Still, patterns add up fast when you work with logs and timestamps for a living. The receipts began appearing in places that didn't match her stories. Dinners billed to names I didn't recognize. Hotel charges dated the same weekend she swore she'd been in town. Once, she left her phone on the kitchen counter. I reached for it to order takeout, and her hand snapped over mine like I'd touched a live wire. Her fingers shook as she pulled it away. "Private work stuff," she said, with a laugh that was too quick and a brightness that felt rehearsed. I laughed too, because laughing is what you do when the alternative is admitting you're being lied to. But there was a tightness in my chest I couldn't shake. The part of me trained to find anomalies did what it always does. Cataloged everything. Timestamps, receipts, patterns of movement, tiny inconsistencies that, when stitched together, drew a shape I didn't want to see. You learn, in cybersecurity, that most intrusions start small. An extra open port, a misconfigured setting, a single click on a malicious link. By the time the damage is visible, the attacker has already been inside for months. Marriage felt the same. A late-night text here, a withheld detail there, and suddenly the person you trusted had mapped a new route into a life you thought was private. I could have confronted her the night I found the first real evidence. I could have smashed plates, shouted accusations, demanded explanations. But I'm not a man who lunges first. I'm a man who watches, documents, and plans. So I did what I do best. I started to follow the footprint she left behind. Not with rage, but with the clinical calm of someone who knows how to collect proof that won't crumble under scrutiny. That decision would change everything. What began as a quiet suspicion would become a full investigation. And when the truth finally stacked up in front of me, the person who called herself safe would find out how unsafe her world could be. I knew better than most how small things add up. In my world, a single out-of-place packet in a network log can be the first sign of breach. So I treated my home the same way I treated a server farm. If there was an anomaly, find a trace, then follow it. I installed a data clone on Hailey's phone the way an analyst deploys a honeypot. Quiet, invisible, and comprehensive. The app mirrored everything to a secure partition on my laptop. SMS, iMessage, call logs, email headers, and GPS pings. I didn't want to watch. I wanted proof. Cold, verifiable proof that wouldn't evaporate under guilt or tears. Within 48 hours, the pattern showed itself. A contact labeled Lydia, project lead, pinged her at odd hours. The messages started with campaign checklists and creative feedback. Banal, professional. But then the punctuation changed. Emojis crept in. A great job became miss you. Work hours bled into late-night planning. Voice notes appeared that were too personal to be client feedback. I dug deeper. The name behind Lydia was Tyler Brent, her regional director. Divorced, liked by clients, friendly with the team. The kind of man who uses mentorship as camouflage. I'd seen profiles like his. They begin professional and end somewhere private. When you read chat logs for a living, you learn the punctuation of deceit, the slow slide, logistical messages, then inside jokes, then a shift to future tense plans. We should meet to go over the brief becomes we should meet. Can you cover my travel? Becomes let's take a weekend. It's almost clinical, almost elegant in its predictability. I didn't confront Hailey. Not yet. Confrontation is emotional. Evidence is surgical. I kept the ordinary life rolling. I still made the coffee, fixed the leaky faucet, kissed the top of her head as she left for late-night edits. Every normal routine became part of the camouflage. The safest place for observation is the place where nothing seems out of place. Then, because patterns in life, like patterns in code, prefer redundancy, I hired Mason, a private investigator I'd worked with years back on a corporate fraud case. He had a reputation for discretion and for getting the kind of images that speak without commentary. I gave him a simple brief. Follow Hailey's public trail, watch the hotel listings, check credit card traces, and let me know if anything escalated. 3 days later, the envelope arrived. The photos inside were clinical, time-stamped, undeniable. Hailey and Tyler leaving a downtown luxury hotel, their hands linked, the way people who have crossed a line walk. Another shot, the hotel valet closing the trunk, a receipt from room service tucked in the corner. One image showed Tyler checking his phone, a text preview visible on the lock screen. It said, "Can't wait till tomorrow. X." When she walked back through the front door that night, she was still wearing the scent of someone else's cologne, her smile practiced and light. She pressed her mouth to mine, and for a second the room held the lie like a physical thing. Her lips, the familiar cadence of her voice, the way she smelled, all the small comforts I'd built around myself. And beneath that, a new map I hadn't signed. I stood there, holding her face, feeling two truths at once. The intimacy of the kiss and the knowledge of the photos in my hand. The shock had long since ceded to something colder. This wasn't just a betrayal of marriage vows. It was a violation of the trust I'd given freely, the same way a client hands over credentials when they trust you to secure them. That night I made a choice. I could have stormed the hotel, raised hell, demanded apologies, and torn apart everything in the heat of emotion. I've seen men do that in movies, the wrench-throwing climaxes and shattered china. I'm not a movie man. I am someone who watches, records, and executes with patience. What I wanted wasn't to destroy in the moment. It was to design a lesson so precise it would be remembered. Something that wouldn't be a single eruption, but an unraveling. Professional consequences, social exposure, the slow collapse of the world she believed she had built. Not because I enjoyed the pain. I didn't. But because there is a particular justice in returning someone's certainty as uncertainty. So I closed the envelope, slipped the photos into a locked drawer, and started to plan. Not for revenge that looks like rage, but for a remediation. Evidence catalog, backup stored, contingencies mapped. In my line of work, you don't act on suspicion. You act on confirmed patterns. And finally, for the first time since I'd noticed those tiny anomalies, the pattern was undeniable. 2 weeks of quiet work did what yelling never could. I had screenshots pulled from cloned backups, photos timestamped by Mason, call logs showing midnight conversations, and bank records that match hotel charges to the nights she'd called training retreats. I cataloged everything, labeled it, and stored redundant copies. In my world, evidence is the only language that holds in courtrooms and in people's minds. But exposure without thought is just spectacle. I wasn't after a momentary eruption. I wanted precision. I wanted consequences that would ripple through the neat little world she'd built with one hand on my wallet and the other on someone else's arm. So I started small and quiet. Tyler Brent was careful, but no one is careful enough when someone else decides to look. I sent an anonymous report to his company's IT security team suggesting that a phishing attempt had been made using his credentials. It was a plausible, ethical nudge, not a how-to on intrusion, just a flag that encouraged them to look closer. When IT started routine sweeps, they found irregularities, unusual access times, an odd login pattern from a public IP. That triggered HR to ask questions. HR asked for statements. Statements lead to interviews. Interviews lead to awkward silence in the hallways. Then, under separate cover, a discreet email landed in the inbox of Tyler's HR director. Anonymous tip. Inappropriate relationships between a regional director and subordinates. No accusations, just a trail of dates and receipts that matched the information I compiled. HR moved fast. Maybe too fast for Tyler's ego. Hailey's promotion, the one she'd almost had in her pocket, suddenly came under review. Pending, they called it. A week later, it was postponed, pending formal inquiry. The office grapevine did what grapevines do. Rumor took root, and then blossomed into speculation. Colleagues who once smiled at her in the break room began to look away. Hailey started to panic. She came home rattled, voice tight, throwing questions at me like darts. Did you hear anything? Did anyone call you? She accused, deflected, tried to manufacture calm. I acted like the man she'd married. Patient, steady, unbroken. I made pasta. I asked about her day. I kissed her forehead. Calm is disarming. It makes people careless. The day of our 12th anniversary arrived like any other. The same restaurant where we'd had our first date. The same table by the window. She dressed like the woman who had once been the center of my world. Black dress, hair curled, perfume that always made me think of late summertime. She wore confidence like armor, unaware that I'd been polishing the blade it would glance off. I ordered the usual. She fussed at me for picking the wine. We laughed at private jokes, the patrons around us none the wiser. Halfway through dessert, a smirk crept across my face. It was time. I stood up slowly, the kind of movement that commands attention because it's out of rhythm with the room. I lifted my glass. To my wife, I said, loud enough for the table to hush and heads to turn. To 12 years. Her smile was automatic, practiced, but there was a tremor at its edges. To 12 years, she echoed. Then I lowered the glass and added, with all the sweetness of a recorded voice, to my wife, my safe option. The air shifted. A waitress paused mid-step. Halogens above the bar went unnoticed. Hailey's smile died in place. What did you say? She whispered. I tapped my phone and connected to the restaurant's display, a little trick I'd arranged in advance with the manager under the pretense of showing family photos. The screen flickered, and then a slideshow began to play, large and impossible to ignore. First came the innocuous, pictures of dinner plates, blurry vacation backgrounds. Then the receipts, dated and highlighted. Room charges at a downtown luxury hotel, 2-night stays that matched her in town weekends. Then the messages, a string that started with "How's the campaign?" and devolved into "Miss you," and a heart emoji. The images bled into one another, the narrative assembling itself like a forensic report. The hotel lobby, the valet receipt, Tyler's name in the payment line. I watched as the room read it the way I had. The same slow, dawning horror. People leaned forward. Conversations died. Phones came out, and records began to duplicate my slideshow across the web before the meal was finished. And then, as if the universe enjoyed irony, Tyler's wife walked in. She'd been invited by a mutual acquaintance who'd no idea the invitation would be used as a symmetry in my plan. Her face when she saw the images was something I'll never forget. Confusion, then recognition, then a look that burned like acid. She had been loath to believe anonymous hints. She couldn't deny what the screen showed. Hailey's face went paper white. Her lips moved soundlessly. She clutched at the tablecloth as if it were a raft. "Mark," she whispered, voice small. "Please. Mark, don't." I didn't answer. I didn't need to. The proof was speaking, and it was far more eloquent than I ever could be. I walked to the table, looked down at her, and said plainly, "You told me I was your safe option. I thought you meant my life. Turns out you meant my security." Tyler rose from the corner of the restaurant, face flushed, trying to salvage the last shreds of dignity. He started toward us, jaw clenched. "You'll regret this," he barked. "I'll regret letting you believe you were safe," I replied, and then I walked out. Behind me, I heard the stutter of plates, people whispering, the unmistakable sound of a life beginning to unravel. Hailey's scream echoed in the doorway, raw and untethered. I didn't look back. I stepped into the cool night, the city air hitting my face like a wake-up call. 2 weeks of methodical, quiet work had detonated. It wasn't brutal. It was surgical. And when she watched the footage spread across phones and feeds that night, she would finally understand the difference between feeling safe and being untouchable. The next morning, I was in my office, going over client security reports, when the glass door slammed open so hard it rattled. Hailey stormed in, hair disheveled, makeup streaked like a watercolor gone wrong. She looked nothing like the composed, calculating woman who used to hold boardrooms hostage with a smile. Her voice cracked as she shouted, "How could you ruin my life like this, Mark?" I didn't look up right away. I wanted her to feel that silence, that absence of attention she'd never experienced before. When I finally raised my eyes, I said calmly, "You call me your safe option, Hailey. I just canceled your subscription." She froze, then broke down, right there in front of the interns and clients walking by. "You don't understand," she gasped. "It wasn't supposed to go this far. Tyler and I, it was emotional, okay? I just needed to feel something again." I leaned back, studying her. "You wanted to feel something? Congratulations. That's fear. That's what betrayal feels like from the other side." Her tears fell harder. "I didn't think you'd do this to me," she whispered. I almost laughed. Of course she didn't. That was her biggest mistake. She thought because I didn't yell, I didn't care. Because I was calm, I was weak. She never realized that calm isn't the absence of emotion. It's control sharpened into a weapon. "Mark, please," she continued, desperate now. "Can you at least talk to HR? Tell them to drop the complaint? I can't lose my job. Not like this." "You lost that job the moment you signed the receipts at the Hilton," I said coldly. "I didn't destroy your career, Hailey. I just turned the lights on." Her voice turned shrill. "You wanted revenge. You've had it. Can't you just stop?" I stood, finally meeting her eye at full height. "You're confusing revenge with consequence. What's happening to you isn't revenge. It's the world catching up to the truth you try to bury." She covered her face with her hands, sobbing into her palms. For a moment, I saw flashes of the woman I once loved, the one who used to fall asleep on my shoulder after long nights working late. But that woman was gone, replaced by someone who'd traded security for adrenaline and called it freedom. "Please," she whispered. "I'm sorry. I made a mistake." "No," I said quietly. "You made a choice." And I walked out of my own office, leaving her standing there, broken, humiliated, but still clinging to her lies. That afternoon, I called my lawyer. The divorce papers were filed within hours. Thanks to the ironclad prenup I'd insisted on before we married, a detail she'd once mocked me for, she walked away with nothing but her clothes and her car. No alimony, no share of the house, not even access to our joint accounts. She had built her comfort on my reliability, and I had dismantled it one clause at a time. A week later, the ripples reached the man who'd started it all. Tyler Brandt was fired for violating company policy after the HR review concluded. The official report used words like unprofessional conduct and breach of ethics. The unofficial version was simpler. He'd been sleeping with subordinates, and the evidence was undeniable. His soon-to-be ex-wife filed for full custody the same day. Rumor had it, she'd received a copy of the same file I'd sent to HR, the same anonymous package that had started the whole chain reaction. Hailey tried to rebuild, but Seattle's marketing scene is small, and gossip travels faster than truth. Word spread about the hotel, the affair, the firing. Her friends ghosted her. No brunch invites, no texts, no shoulders to cry on. Even Chloe, her best friend since high school, blocked her after learning the details from someone at Tyler's firm. One night, around 2 a.m., my phone buzzed. It was a text from Hailey. "You destroyed me." I stared at the screen for a while before typing my reply. "No, you did. I just gave you a mirror." She didn't respond. She never did again. Weeks later, I learned she'd moved out of state. Rumor said she was working as a freelance consultant somewhere in Arizona, using her maiden name, pretending none of it had happened. Maybe she thought distance could erase reputation. But the internet remembers everything. As for me, I went back to work. My business grew. I slept soundly, not because I'd won, but because I'd finally stopped being the safe option. The man who fixes problems quietly had become the man who created the reckoning. And somewhere out there, Hailey would wake up every morning knowing one thing. The man she once called safe had made sure she'd never feel safe again. 6 months passed like dust through fingers. I left Seattle behind. The rain, the skyline, the ghosts. Arizona suited me better. Wide skies, dry heat, no memories hiding in the corners of every cafe or intersection. I opened my own cybersecurity firm in Phoenix. Smaller clients, quieter days. No corporate politics. No lies dressed up as network security breaches. Just honest work. Clean money. Freedom. People say moving on is about forgetting. They're wrong. It's about learning to live with the scar and realizing the pain taught you something no comfort ever could. Hailey had vanished from my radar. No calls. No social media. Not even a whisper. Until one evening, an email arrived. Subject: I owe you an apology. From Hailey Lawson. I stared at the name for a long time before opening it. The message was long, pages of regret, deflection, and self-pity dressed as reflection. I was confused, she wrote. I thought I wanted excitement, but all I really wanted was stability, what you gave me. You were the one person who made me feel safe, Mark. I ruined it. I know that now. She ended it with, if you can ever forgive me, I'd like to talk. Maybe over coffee. I just need to know you're okay. I read it twice, not because I was tempted to reply, but because I wanted to understand the psychology behind it. She didn't miss me. She missed control. The safety net she'd set on fire now looked comforting compared to the chaos she'd built for herself. I never responded. Instead, I archived the email and went for a drive. The desert at night is a strange kind of therapy. Endless black sky, stars like distant firewalls between you and everything you used to be. I pulled over on a ridge outside town and sat on the hood of my truck, scrolling through old messages. Photos of vacations. Anniversary notes. That one text that started everything. You were my safe option. Those 5 words had haunted me for months. They used to sound like an insult. Now, they sounded like a warning. One I'd finally understood. I had spent my life being the dependable one. The quiet problem solver. The man who made everyone else feel secure while slowly erasing his own needs. And she mistook that steadiness for weakness. But safety and submission aren't the same thing. And when you push a calm man too far, he doesn't explode. He evolves. That night, I poured myself a drink, sat on my porch, and watched the desert burn red under the setting sun. My phone buzzed again, a number I didn't recognize. I didn't check it. Didn't need to. For the first time in years, I wasn't curious. Because the truth is, closure doesn't come from confrontation. It comes from indifference. Somewhere out there, Hailey was probably rebuilding her image. New city, new friends, maybe even a new man to call her safe option. But deep down, she'd always know that safety comes with a cost. And she'd already paid it. I finished my drink, watching the horizon fade to black. The desert wind howled, soft, endless, honest. I whispered into the dark. They say safety is an illusion. But for her, it's extinction. Because she had built her comfort on control, manipulating others into stability she could exploit. I, on the other hand, rebuilt mine on freedom. Freedom from the illusion that love means sacrifice. Freedom from the need to be the good man, while someone else plays victim. Freedom from her. As the last bit of sunlight disappeared behind the mesa, I smiled. Not with vengeance, but with clarity. Hailey had destroyed the version of me she thought was safe. But in doing so, she created the version that no longer needed her approval. And that was the final lesson she'd never forget. Because once a safe man stops caring about safety, he becomes unstoppable.